Now I would say that new running brand to the scene, Mount to Coast, have had a pretty big impact. What with their excellent sort of road ultra racing shoe, the R1, and then their brilliant first ever trail shoe, the T1. But while we were away on our fantastic road trip this year, they actually added another model to their ever-growing running shoe lineup, and that was the H1. And this is actually their road to trail sort of gravel shoe, and this has got some very impressive features. And guess what? I'm going to be telling you all about them in today's video. Then we're going to be grabbing the cameras and bringing you guys along on our first run in the new Mount to Coast H1. Thanks for tuning in again, folks. I hope you are all fit and well. I'm Lloyd Purvis and this is Run4Adventure. So we're going to get stuck straight in with some facts and figures about the new H1. So they actually retail here in the UK for £150. So a very similar price point compared to Mount to Coast R1 road shoe, and a little bit more affordable than their trail shoe, the T1, at £170. Weight wise, up next, and I was really surprised considering this has got a lot of foam in that midsole when I popped them on the scales, and they only weighed in at 261 grams in my size, a UK 9.5. So a really decent weight for, like I said, a deeply cushioned crossover shoe. And it really does go to show some of those other brands out there that have recently produced trail shoes in my size that are weighing in at a pretty hefty 330 grams or even 340 grams, that you can make a deeply cushioned running shoe and keep it nice and light. Moving on to midsole stats, and we've got a 35mm stack height of the heel, 29mm under the forefoot, giving the H1 a 6mm heel offset. And I personally think that's a really good option for that sort of road to trail crossover shoe. And then flipping them over to reveal Mount to Coast's Versa Grip outsole. Now this has been developed to offer a good level of grip, traction and durability on a big mix of different terrains. When it comes to upper construction, we're seeing a lot of the features that the brand has become known for, including their very clever tuned fit dual lacing system. So this is actually made up of a more sort of traditional lacing system at the top, and then we've got this cord and toggle system further down. And what that actually allows you to do is customize the fit of the midfoot and in the forefoot independently, which gives you more personalization when it comes to fit and upper lockdown. The dual features don't stop there, and they actually carry on in this upper construction when we take a closer look at the fabrics used. So Mount to Coast have actually gone with a jacketed material across the top half of the shoe for an adaptive fit and extra comfort, while on the lower sections we've got a performance woven fabric which has actually been reinforced with aramid fibres that are 5 times stronger than steel, so making sure that the H1 is going to hold up to all those tough miles that we put our running shoes through. And then finishing up, when it comes to the upper construction, we've got a good level of support in the back end of the shoe from a substantial heel cradle, a nice level of padding around the ankle collar and in the heel, some nice high-vis detailing around the upper for safer nighttime running, and we've also got a good toe bumper up front for some decent on-trail protection. So lots of the features in the H1 sound impressive, but it's actually this clever midsole setup that I'm very interested in. So Mount to Coast have actually used their very clever circle cell midsole technology, and basically that means that this midsole has been constructed using 9 kilograms of organic waste and residual biomass, so making that part of the shoe super sustainable. But it doesn't stop there, because it also packs a punch. So the brand claim that this midsole is going to give you a very similar feel and performance to a Peba midsole, but it's going to give you double the running lifespan. So not only performance, but also high levels of durability. So it's going to be really interesting to get out there on the run and test out those claims today. But it doesn't stop there, because we've also got a nicely cushioned, decent pair of insoles inside the H1. So that should add another level of plushness close to the foot. And there you have it, the all new hybrid running shoe from Mount to Coast, the H1. Now, for today's route, I've picked a good mix of sort of road, pavement and trail, so it should be the perfect testing ground for these. So without further ado, I'm off to get changed, and we'll see you guys out there. Okay, that's the first mile ticked off, and as far as the sizing goes, just like all the MTC shoes I've tested out on the channel, I would say the H1 is true to size. So UK 9.5 giving me good length in the toe, and it's got an average width in the toe box. I would say maybe it's a little bit narrower than the R1 and the T1 trail shoe. Okay, so I mentioned back at the studio that I wanted to make this route today as varied as possible to give the shoes a thorough testing, and we're only 2 miles in. Already we've had tarmac, gravel trail, we've had some mud to deal with and some sections of wet grass, and the H1 is coping with it really well. But let's crack on and let's try and get our usual 7.5 to 8 miles in on this test run. Boom, that's 3 miles done already, and as far as upper comfort goes, well, it feels really good straight out of the box. Nice and plush around the ankle and in the heel, really comfortable across the top of my foot, and that's been the case again with all the MTC shoes. Just a nice plush feeling upper, good lockdown around my midfoot, and a really good hold in the heel. Right, that is 4 miles in the bag. Now, obviously, the H1 is a pretty light hybrid shoe at only 261 grams in a UK 9.5, but where the midsole and the upper are very similar weights, it also feels super balanced, which just makes it really nice to run in. It feels nimble and responsive underfoot. But we've just soaked up a bit of tarmac. Now we're going to head back to the trails. Okay, so the run continues to go well, and we've just gone past 5 miles. But if you've been enjoying the content on the channel and you're yet to subscribe, maybe today is the day. So super simple to do just by clicking on the little red box down there in the corner. But best of all, it is completely free, but it really is a big help in the crazy world of the YouTube algorithm. Okay, so we are getting this test run done. So just gone past 6.4 miles. It's actually started to rain, so we're going to start heading back to the studio. But one thing that has really surprised me is how well this outsole has performed. So obviously it's got that very shallow lug. You know, it's not suited for super muddy conditions, but we've run a big mix of trail today, and traction and grip has been really good. But let's get back home and let's wrap this video up with a quick conclusion on how the Mount to Coast H1 has performed out here on its test run. Well, I definitely timed that run well today, because like I said on camera, it just started to spit with rain, and as I headed home, it just got heavier and heavier and heavier, and it is chucking it down right now. So for once, I got the timing right on today's run. Now my Strava says I ran 7.78 miles, but it was actually closer to 8.5 miles. So schoolboy error, I stopped to change the camera battery over and I forgot to restart my watch. But I know what they say, if it's not on Strava, it didn't happen. So I suppose I ran 7.7 miles in these today. But I do have lots of positives when it comes to the Mount to Coast H1. And firstly, this upper feels very plush in every way. And it's kind of one of those running shoes that I just slip on my feet and everything seems to fit and feel right straight away. And you know, I don't really give it a lot of thought when I'm out there running. So no rubbing, no irritation, no hot spots or anything like that. It's just a very comfortable place to put my feet while I'm running. The only thing I would mention is maybe it does feel a little bit narrower in the toe box when I compare it to the R1 road shoe and the T1 trail shoe. And you can actually see it does sort of pinch or taper in quite aggressively towards the toe. Now, this wasn't an issue for me on today's run. Like I always mention on the channel, I've got quite a narrow foot shape, but if you did have some width to your forefoot, then you might struggle with the width in the toe on the H1. The brilliant Tune Fit dual lacing system worked well again for me, so it allowed me to get all that personalisation of fit. So really secure lockdown around my midfoot, good hold in the heel, no slippage or movement within the upper. And I think I actually prefer this dual system on the H1 with a more traditional running shoe lace up top when I compare it to that dual cord and toggle system on the T1. I think this is just a little bit more simplified, and that system on the T1 can be a bit fiddly. Moving down the shoe, and this Circle Cell midsole gave me a nice comfortable ride on all the hard stuff today, and I'd happily bob along on the road in a pair of these all day, but when I did pick up the sections of trail, I had good underfoot protection and the shoes felt nice and grounded and stable. Now obviously you can see from the footage, nothing that we ran on was overly challenging. It was all pretty friendly stuff today because, you know, this shoe hasn't been designed for running on super technical challenging trails, and I actually think the route we picked today was a really good test for the H1 because it's kind of what it's been built for, and they coped with it really well. I personally think the midsole on the T1 trail shoe gave me a little bit more pop and energy return than this, but this was still nicely cushioned and comfortable on all the different types of terrain I ran today. Another big surprise was outsole performance. So on the run there was a couple of sections of pavement that were under trees and they were kind of covered in this slippery green sort of algae stuff. I don't really know what it was, but it was very slippery, and obviously it's autumn, so lots of wet leaves on the ground, and this rubber outsole felt nice and sticky and performed well. There was also, and I wasn't expecting this, a couple of sections of light mud to deal with, and even though this is a very shallow lug on the H1, it actually gave me a decent level of traction. So this Versus Grip rubber outsole performed way better than I was expecting. However, a word of caution, this is still not a shoe to buy if you're going to be heading out on super muddy trails. So rounding up after today's first test run in the Mount to Coast H1, and I think the brand have got another solid performing running shoe to add to their existing range. So if you're looking for that sort of one-stop shop running shoe where you're going to soak up those road miles before you head out on dry sort of canal paths or fire roads, then I think the H1 is definitely worth a closer look. However, if you're looking for a shoe for more sort of technical, muddy, wet winter running, then these are definitely not the shoes for you. And maybe the Mount to Coast T1 trail shoe with its Vibram Mega Grip rubber outsole and its deeper lug depth would be a better choice. And on that note, it brings another first impressions video to a close. Now, I know it's been a little bit sort of first impressions heavy at the moment at the channel, and that's just because we've been playing catch up after our incredible European trip in the new adventure bus. We had new shoes stacking up all over the place. Well, I'm happy to say we are catching up. So keep your eyes peeled. There'll be some more varied content heading to the channel soon. Don't forget, if you have enjoyed the video and found it helpful in any way, to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, as it is a big help. And I've got to say a massive thanks to Mount to Coast for sending out the shoes for us to test and review. And an even bigger thanks to you guys at home for watching and supporting the channel. It really is appreciated. We'll be back here very soon with some more interesting running content. And as always, stay safe and keep on running. This clever midsole setup that interests me the most. So Mount to Coast have actually used their This Versa Grip outsole performed way better than I was expecting out there today. I really wasn't making much sense. Not only is the shoe